Hello, my name is Will Stanley from Vale Engineering. I'm a technical sales engineer, and today we're going to be looking at our C94 2400 4-inch API safe load coupler, and we're going to be executing a seal changeover. In order to carry out the seal changeover, the tools we're going to be required to use are a 1/2 inch torque wrench with a 36mm deep socket, a 3/8 drive torque wrench with a 19mm deep socket, a 5mm Allen key T-bar, a small hook or pick, some copper grease and a small paintbrush, some Loctite 243 and just some general mineral oil, and the seals themselves required for the changeover. One of the tools that you're required to use for the seal changeover is one of our API 4-inch safe load maintenance tools. Part number is 49420. So to get things rolling, first we're going to put on some protective gloves, just because we're handling copper grease and the mineral oil. So the first thing that's going to be required to do is to sit the coupler on top of the maintenance tool, like so. Push down on the inner part of the coupler, so we engage the outer so it moves forwards. We can then remove the coupler from the maintenance tool. So now we're in a position to remove the release handle. To do so, take the 3/8 drive torque wrench and undo the 19mm dome nut. Also remove the flat washer and the spring washer. We can now remove the release handle. As part of this coupler's safety feature, we now need to remove the interlock using the 5mm Allen key T-bar. The interlock will slide off. In order to open the valve, and slide back on the release handle and open the valve. From there now, we can now remove the lock nut from the inner part of the body. Then the spindle will slide out through the crank block and through the body. Now we can lift the body off the seal carrier. To remove the seal carrier from the poppet assembly, we apply a small downward pressure, sliding the outer assembly and being careful to slide it out through the middle. To remove the two outer seals, we can use a small pick. So now we remove the wiper seal and the product seal. You squeeze the seals gently to raise them, insert the pick under the seal and remove. Same for the wiper seal. To remove the face seal, gently slide the hook on the inside to relieve. Please take note to try not to damage the carrier. Once with a small relief, you can then remove the face seal by hand. Remove like so. At this stage now, we can now inspect the carrier for any damage. There should be no damage to any of the grooves for the main seal and the wiper seal, and also any damage to any of the lips or faces for the face seal. You can also check the inside of the bore of the seal carrier just to make sure there are no binding marks or any gouging. Prior to installing the new seals, we will wipe and clean the seal carrier. Once the seal carrier is clean and free from any damage, we can then proceed with the installation of the new seals. To do this, you'll need 3 replacement seals and the mineral oil. To fit the face seal, we need to apply a small amount of oil onto the face seal seating area. This just helps with installation. To start with the seal fitting, you need to force the seal into its 2 grooves, the outer groove and inner bottom groove. Start with the outer top, working the seal bit by bit, and force into the groove. You can then ensure that the bottom of the face seal is engaged into the groove. Like so. To apply the wipe seal and the main product O-ring, again, we apply a small amount of mineral oil. So apply the O-ring, stretch the O-ring around the outer and ensure it's not twisted. Same for the main O-ring, in one motion. Now, before we reinstall the poppet into the seal carrier, we'll just give the poppet a quick inspection to ensure this is free from damage also. There should be no damage to the face of the poppet and also the sealing area of the poppet. On another note, you should always ensure as well that the guide legs are free from damage. To apply the seal carrier to the poppet assembly, we slide the seal carrier over the poppet arrangement with the face seal facing downwards. Slide over the legs, and then to engage the poppet into the face seal, you just slide the carrier over whilst also forcing the poppet into the carrier. Once this is seated, we can now proceed with the rest of the installation. That concludes the seal changeover on the poppet assembly. Now we need to change seals on the lock nut. The 3 seals on this item also. We have a large outer O-ring and 2 smaller inner O-rings. To remove, we're going to use a pick again. Like so. So again, like before, we'll give the part a quick inspection and make sure it's free and clean from any debris. Pay close attention when checking for damage on the seal grooves, on the inside and the outer seal groove. We can now proceed with fitting the seals. The large outer O-ring, we just slide over the threaded part of the lock nut. The 2 inner ones, be installed carefully to ensure that they are not twisted. If it is first time installing these inner seals, they can be quite tricky. The easiest way is to squeeze the O-ring slightly, just to enable you to start it in the groove. Once it's in, you can then work it round slowly and gently until it falls into place. That's the seals replaced on the lock nut. We can now proceed on to the final assembly. Please take note on reassembly, the orientation of the crank block and the inner body. So we can slowly slide the body over the carrier arrangement. That's stage one. We now need to add a small amount of copper grease to the inner O-rings and also the outer O-ring and the thread of the lock nut. We can then slide the lock nut over the spindle. Lift the crank block to aid in alignment. Slide the spindle through the body, through the crank block and into the rear bush. You can now screw in the lock nut. Once it's hand tight, we can then further tighten the lock nut to its specified torque setting of 80 Newton meters. Once the lock nut is tight, we can then close the valve. In order to do so, we need to apply the release handle, turn it back clockwise until the valve closes. Remove the handle so we can refit the interlock mechanism. Apply a small amount of the Loctite 243 to the cap heads. And tighten into place. We can now fit the release handle. Add the release handle to splines. Add the flat washer, spring washer. Apply a small amount of Loctite 243 to the threads. And apply the dome nut. We can then further tighten this to its specified torque of 40 Newton meters. We can now lift the release latch and lock the coupler into place, thus leaving the release handle locked in position by the interlock. This concludes the reassembly. We hope you found this tutorial useful. For any further information, please see your local distributor.